It's time to read ghost stories. Real ghost stories with a real human. Let's go. And for this special edition, my birds are sitting in the background. I have two macaws. So if you hear their little squawks and noises, that's just my birds, red bird and green bird. Now let's get into the ghost stories. Story 1. Robin Hood's Bay Ghost Story. Does anyone else who has stayed in Robin Hood's Bay in North Yorkshire had any strange experiences when staying in the cottages in the village? I've been going there since I was 16, now in my late 20s, and some of the cottages there were insanely eerie. The worst experience I had was in one of the larger Georgian houses in the lower bay, with a small fenced yard in front that I was staying in with my family when I was 18. I cannot recall the name now. I was in the living room on the second floor. The rest of the family had gone out to the pub for a drink, and I had stayed in to read my book whilst Mum was cooking food in the kitchen on the ground floor. Gosh, that sounds so beautifully nostalgic to me being from the UK. There's something special about going to a pub or having your mum cook a roast dinner on Sunday evening. At the back of the living room, there was a keyboard that was behind the sofa against a wall. There was no door that could have led to this area without me seeing the person come in, as I was sat adjacent to the sofa facing a door with my back to the wall. As I sat there reading, I began to have this eerie feeling come over me, like someone was in the room with me, but no one was physically there. This sensation of being watched just became worse and worse. Suddenly, the speakers on the keyboard began making a crackling sound on and off over a series of minutes with no clear pattern like static/radio interference. Eventually, being spooked, I went and tried to turn off the keyboard. The static stopped for a few minutes, but then came back again. I got up to check it, and the keyboard had turned itself back on. I then unplugged it at the mains, and this stopped the static briefly, only for the television speaker to begin doing the same thing. I then felt something tug on the back of my hair from where I sat. That was it for me. I rushed down to my mum cooking dinner in the kitchen. She told me that afternoon, while we were there at the beach, that the static thing had happened to her as well. Later, that same holiday, my family and our friends were drinking and chatting in the living room. I had not told them of my paranormal experience, only for the keyboard not only to begin making static sounds, but now to begin playing one of those preset tunes by itself when nobody was near it. Safe to say, we were all very freaked out. We stayed recently in another one called Bank House, a 17th century cottage-ish, and a top-floor bedroom that has this horrible, eerie feeling in it. The first time I went up with our dog to the room, there was an immediate bad feeling to the room. The lights were flickering like crazy, and our dog immediately bolted and ran off downstairs, not interested in searching the room like she had in all the other rooms in the cottage. It had a rocking chair in the corner, and I hated waking up in the night as I was convinced I would see someone sitting there. I was so freaked out that my husband had to come with me to the lower floor if I needed to use the bathroom in the night, as I was too scared to go by myself. Story 2. Vintage clock. So I had numerous experiences with the paranormal in my life, especially with paranormal activities, because I swear my childhood house is haunted, but this experience has always stayed with me. Till this day, I can't look at a vintage clock the same without having instant fear of it. To start off, this happened to me in middle school. I found this old antique vintage clock in good condition. It was a wooden clock, pretty small. It would chime 3 times to signal the start of an hour. So I asked my parents if I could bring it upstairs and use it. They agreed, and I also asked who did it belong to, because it looked really nice and not in my parents' style of furniture. They told me they didn't know, but I could use it, basically, and they also brushed me off in my questions. So I put it in my room, and I have a bunk bed with my brother. He sleeps on top, and I sleep on the bottom. Top's always better. I put the clock next to me by my head above the rail. So for months, nothing happened with the clock. I actually loved it because it sang with 3 chimes. But one night I had a nightmare. I was sleeping, and suddenly I felt this pressure on me. I realized this was sleep paralysis, but I felt bad energy. It was coming from my room door, which was fully closed, and then I watched this door slowly open by itself. At this point I'm screaming for my dad, because my parents' room was right next to mine, and I knew he would be up because he gets up very early to go to the gym. But as soon as I scream, my voice is hoarse, like there's no sound at all coming from it, and I'm coughing, trying to scream desperately for my dad. And I wake up because my dad woke me up. He asked if I was okay, and I was apparently just like, yeah, why? Because I was still out of it from my dream, and he was like, okay, I'm just making sure you're all right. I remember watching him leave the room, and I fell back asleep instantly. The dream then continued, except the door was almost halfway opened, so I'm screaming again, and I'm asking my dad for help again. I'm begging him to come back, but it's here. I'm freaking out because this pressure is back on me, and I'm seeing the door almost fully open, and I'm shaking myself, because for me, when I have paralysis dream, what works is I start moving my head too much, so I wake up, so I'm doing exactly that. Then I hear it, right next to me. My clock starts chiming, but over the chiming, I hear the sounds of a little girl's voice mocking me. Daddy, chime, Daddy, chime, Daddy. It's whispering, and again it was so close that I woke up, and I was on my side facing the wall, and I felt that evil presence on the other side of my bed. I was too scared to turn around or go to sleep or even cover myself with a blanket. I just stared at the wall. I ended up asking my dad if he saw any weird things or if I did anything weird, and he told me nothing had happened. So, I'm at a family's party and we're sharing ghost stories. I'm telling my cousin my dream, and they stopped me halfway through. They told me that they heard this story from my dad, and I was confused because what? And they proceeded to tell me that on the night my dad woke up to me screaming in my room, when he entered my room, but I was screaming and choking, so he shook me awake violently. Then he told my cousins that he'd never heard me or anyone in the house ever scream like that. I literally felt instant fear, because my parents had always gaslit me into thinking my paranormal experiences I had were unreal, but I had an overactive imagination. But hearing this confirmed that I wasn't overreacting. After that, I turned off the clock and I put it back in the basement. I did come back 5 years later to see it and maybe sell it, but my dad had thrown that clock away. I hate that house. Honestly, after I moved out, I never experienced anything paranormal. But me and my brother can agree that there's a demon little girl in the basement, because there's multiple instances where we've seen the little girl in the house. Story 3. My boyfriend has an attachment. I had never experienced anything paranormal before I met my boyfriend. We met in October of 2024 and began dating in November. I ended up moving in with him into his apartment in January. I know very soon, but we were comfortable enough to do so, and it helped both parties out in a financial situation. My boyfriend had never informed me that he believed he has an attachment before I moved in with him. One night, we got into our first argument. We'd been sitting in the living room, and after I slightly raised my voice, the trash can in the kitchen, which was maybe 10 feet away from the wall dividing the two areas, fell over. It spooked me and my boyfriend. My boyfriend proceeded to apologize to me and informed me that stuff like that happens sometimes. Sometimes when things get upsetting. Sometimes when nothing triggers it at all. Needless to say, of course I believe in the paranormal. I just hadn't experienced it like that. Now, the part I haven't told you guys is that the argument with my boyfriend was about me and my best friend going to Target to buy a Ouija board. Oh, that makes sense. That same day. He told me he doesn't fuck with stuff like that, and I told him it's harmless. Nothing bad could come from it. I was sorely mistaken. Now, nothing bad came from the board we'd previously purchased, because after my boyfriend had informed me of his past with Ouija boards, me and my friends disposed of the board. When my boyfriend was around 11/12, his childhood dog had passed away. He was obviously heartbroken, and he was kind of an odd kid from what I had gathered. He told me he was looking through the woods out by his house, playing with sticks and dirt, stuff that kids do at that age, when he happened upon a Ouija board. Now, from what I can recall of the story, there was not a planchette. I'm not exactly sure what he would have used to use the spirit board, but as a heartbroken kid that just wanted to see his childhood dog again, he attempted to use it. He said he got a few words out, never ever told me what it said, but that he never said goodbye. That is the story he told me that started it all. He would experience things in the home he lived in at the time that were unexplainable and not very nice. He even told me one time something pushed him down the stairs when he was home alone. He eventually moved out of the house before he reached junior high, and moved to where his parents currently live. While I'm not sure if a ton of paranormal stuff happened while he was living there, because he's never told me any of the stories of that house. When he moved out, when he was 18, he would have had stuff in his apartment but never moved around. But I always assumed it was one of his roommates, because he lived with two other guys. Fast forward to the apartment we live in now. He moved in there a little less than 2 years ago. He moved in with his close friend, who likewise of me had no information regarding the fact that my boyfriend might have a ghost. I hate calling it that, but whatever. My boyfriend's close friend, only living there for about 9 to 10 months before moving back in with his mum. While my boyfriend's friend told me it wasn't because of what was happening, my boyfriend was pretty sure it was. My boyfriend is a pretty unserious individual and likes to call this stuff ooga booga stuff, and honestly it's just paranormal activity. I'm not sure of the timeline of everything, but my boyfriend said in the beginning of living in the apartment, he would come home to the coffee table being turned upside down. The mirrors that were previously on the wall, they were cheap $20 mirrors that weren't very heavy, were on the floor. The papasan chairs they had in the living room, instead of a couch in true bachelor fashion, faced down on the floor as well. When stuff like that started happening, he knew immediately that whatever it was not happy to be moving. His friend even informed me that the mirror that they had hung up, that you could see into the living room through his room, and he could see a shadowy figure at around 2 to 5 a.m. almost every night, that he would stay up. Eventually, things stopped being moved in the apartment. When he would leave the house, everything went back to what he thought was normal. When his friend moved out, one of his other friends moved in shortly after, not aware of the things that had occurred. He talked to my boyfriend one night, after living there for about 5 months, that he would see people or shadow figures in his room through the exact same mirror. When I moved in, the activity had almost completely stopped by then, until the night we had that argument. While it was not very bad, sometimes the dishwasher door would slam shut on its own, or we would hear things in the kitchen while in the living room. We prayed over whatever it was, but it didn't feel malevolent, so I never really bothered to talk to anyone about it. We are finally moving into our own place, because that apartment is kind of a shithole anyway. The rent was cheap, give me a break. Our washing machine had been leaking, so the landlord had to come and remove the machine and found subfloor damage and mold underneath it. Due to that, we decided to stay with my parents until we move into our new place next week. This caused a little bit of unhappiness in whatever was attached to my boyfriend. We started staying there on Thursday night. It is now Sunday night, and more things have happened than the 3 months when I was living in the apartment with him. My parents have a mother-in-law suite that we are staying in currently. It's pretty separated from the rest of the house, with its own stairs that lead to a door outside, except for a door in a kitchen area that leads to a hallway with a laundry room and my sister's rooms. In around October of 2023, my parents suffered a really bad house fire. Gosh, it's terrible. That caused my whole family to be misplaced until about a month ago when the renovations had finished. Before I moved in with my boyfriend, I was living in the MIL suite, mother-in-law suite, while the rest of the house was still under construction. I was praying to my parents about the $1,000 a month for rent. I was paying my parents about $1,000 a month for rent, which at the time I could barely afford. Anyways, the electrical system worked great. Everything's great, so whatever. So the whole apartment area, the mother-in-law suite, has dome lights that you can dim with a switch that has a dimmer built into it. When I was living there previously, I would dim the light all the way down and sleep with that. We started staying here on the first night, and I passed out pretty fast. The next night, we're having dinner with my mum, and me and my boyfriend are sitting at the dining room table, and the medium-sized vase with glass pebbles in it, a pretty heavy object, moves 3 inches towards me by itself. I see it out of the corner of my eye, but I don't say anything until I look up at my boyfriend. He's giving me the straight face of, "I didn't like that, look." After dinner, we go upstairs, and he immediately proceeds to tell me he has never had anything like that so obvious happen directly in front of his face before. He explains it as though something was waiting for him to look at the vase so it could happen. He then proceeds to tell me that the lights in the room the night before would brighten and dim on their own. Like, not just a little bit, like to the point where it was almost completely bright, and they would proceed to go completely dark again. And of course, as we're having this conversation, the fully lit lights start to dim down. Not too much, but just enough for us to notice, as if it is responding to what we are talking about. It is currently Sunday night at 2 a.m, and I cannot fall asleep. The previous nights, I had been working all day, and so I didn't give a shit. I just wanted to play video games and then go to bed. But now I'm sitting in bed, next to my asleep boyfriend typing this, because about 2 hours ago, I was sitting on the couch after getting out of the shower, with my towel still on, while my boyfriend was in bed. The light started to dim and brighten again. Me being kind of a brat, I jokingly suggested that maybe the lights just do that. Not even a millisecond after these words exit my mouth, the lights come fully bright. I'm scared. My heart is racing, and my boyfriend responds, "Maybe he didn't like your attitude." The lights go dark. I can feel the pulse in my fingers at this point. I do not know what to do, but my boyfriend definitely has something bad and dark attached to him, and I'm not sure what it is, but I don't like it. I'm sorry I made this story so long, but I felt like it needed some backstory to explain it to you guys correctly. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to sleep tonight, because the lights have been dimming and brightening for the past 2 hours on their own. I've tried not to focus too hard, but it's just too scary. By the way, I know some of you are going to be mad about me My boyfriend nicknamed it Phil from HR, trying to put a little humour in a much darker place, as it's easier for the both of us. But I'm scared that naming it will have made it a little too real. I just put the baby birds to bed, so let's continue our ghost stories. Story 4. Haunting at a brand new house. I'm pretty sure it's safe to talk on Reddit. My family and I were terrified by some unknown entity or entities for years at our old house. One family member is still in denial. The other 4 refuse to talk about it. I'm just wondering how it's possible for a brand new house to be haunted. We were the first house on the lot and had moved a couple of states away. My dad went up first and then he picked me up. The first night I was there, my dad had a heart attack. He had the symptoms of chest pain and went to the ER, and they found nothing. Then, the rest of my family moved up. I don't have a specific order of events. I will sum it up by experiences I heard or witnessed personally. My mum and dad would hear a sort of rubbing against the inside of the walls, as well as voices whisper as they slept. My dad heard several voices, and when he started to open his eyes, the voices said, "Shh," and then ended. My mother one time fell down a flight of stairs as if her feet got kicked out from under her. My infant sister had a baby monitor. My parents would hear something on it talking to her, hitting her, and her just cry out of nowhere. The worst time, you could hear her getting slapped, and my parents couldn't open the door to help her. After forcing it open finally, she had red hand marks on both cheeks. That is awful. My brother had an old mirror in his closet. It used to be on the dresser, but it was too tall to fit in the bedroom, so they took it off. One night, my brother's closet opened, and he claimed to have seen a demon coming out of a mirror trying to get to him, and he ran in terror to my room. I, being half asleep, told him just to go back to bed. He moved the mirror out and seemed not to have issues with the closet opening anymore. For me, it started when I hid in my closet for a long time in the dark while playing hide and seek. I started coughing hard. I coughed mucus to the point of coughing up blood for about a year and couldn't get it to stop with pills, antibiotics, or inhalers. It finally stopped about a year later. I now have reduced air function in my lungs. Next, things would move. First, objects would be misplaced. Then it started playing with my radio, and the radio had knobs for volumes. You had to physically turn up, and a light read out so you can see the volume, and all that at night. I would often sleep with my radio on. It would turn the volume slowly up to get my attention, and then fly full blast. I'd have to jump up and turn the volume down and turn my light off for it to stop. I next started to have dreams of myself in the house, unable to leave the room I'm in. Doors would be unlocked, but stuck closed. In my dream, I would try the lights and the switch would flip up, but no light would come on. If you did open a door in the dream, the lights wouldn't work in the other rooms, and no one would be there except me. The dreams were a shared experience. My brother and sister also experienced them. The strangest experience was when I was folding towels and bedding in a closet facing the stairs. My dad and I heard and saw a figure running up full speed up the stairs to my brother's room and slam the door shut. I opened his door. No one was there. I went downstairs, and he was in the middle of washing dishes. No way it was him. Before the incident with my sister, we'd grabbed a couch by the side of the road. My mother discovered a reddish-brown stain that would not go away. After the incident with my sister, we got rid of the couch, and my dad did some kind of cleansing ritual with the Bible and with glasses of white vinegar. I'm not sure what he did. He spoke Spanish. When he put the glass somewhere it wouldn't be disturbed. We put it under my bed. I had a custom-built bed with shelves and a center compartment, and that's where it sat. Months later it solidified. Me, being curious, brought the cup to my science teacher and added a sample of it to a dish, and it grew black mold. Well, that's not good. Which is odd, as we didn't have black mold at my house. Maybe it picked up some spores between cleaning. If you still got that house, you should get that house checked. After the ritual, the activity drastically dropped. However, we would still get the dreams. Misplacing things and touching my radio continued. It was at random. My thoughts on it after research in this area was an area of conflict during the Western expansion days. The Ward massacre happened only a town over. Who knows what kind of unknown slaughters could have happened? There is also a graveyard 2 blocks away, as well as a very dangerous stretch of highway, with plenty of accidents that could be a portal for lost spirits. It could also be a poltergeist, with the time spent at a house where my teen years were, as well as a bitter divorce between my parents. My father was very tough and strict. The house was no stranger to anger or violence as well. Sadness for a time when my dad lived there. Then my mum lived there. I went to college and got away for a time. I apologise for the very long post. There was a lot of info in there, and I apologise for the background noises. Perhaps it's I that has a ghost in this old place. Story 5. A spirit or not? Question. Hello. I moved out into a new flat, October 2024, with a friend. Since I am here, I always felt in the night that someone was watching me, but I chose to ignore it and bought a light to have it in my room when I sleep. Last week my friend, which is sleeping in another room, came to me to say that she felt someone staying in the bed. And she woke up scared because she didn't see anyone. Yesterday, the thing started to get more active. A balloon, we'd had some from my birthday, started to move by itself into my room, and I got pretty scared from it. I tried to see if it's really a spirit or something, or indeed it reacted to my questions, but then suddenly it stopped. At first, I thought maybe it really was just a swell wind in a room, and I told my friend what happened. But today, again, one balloon started to move itself. Not just one, but more this time. So I said to my friend, try and talk with it and see what they want. So we made a Ouija board. I want to point out that it's not the first time we used a Ouija, and it responded to us. We asked their name, and they responded with Urehu. Then we asked if they searched for someone here, and they said Patav, and again Patahav, when we asked if they wanted something from us. Do these words have a meaning? Also, they said they like the number 4, and that they are the most active, starting from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. We don't know what to do, and even if we are interested in spirituality, we don't have much experience, especially with the spirits. We believe in such things, but we're also not sure if everything is really even real. We're a bit scared, but we don't think our lives are in danger for now. We'd thank you if anyone listening has some advice for us or information that will help us. Story 6. Banshee. Banshee? So this happened when my brother and I were maybe 11 and 12. We lived in a rural town, a town with a nice mix of busy streets and, at the time, sprawling farms. My family home was the second to last house in the neighborhood, before you hit farmland as far as the eye could see. To the right of my house was my neighbor, then a thick hedgerow, which separated the housing estate from the farm. The first 5 or 6 fields in this part of the farm grew barley and wheat. As kids, we made tunnels through the hedgerow and spent hours every day of the summer exploring the farm with friends. Each field was huge and separated us from a neighbouring field by other large hedgerows, some complete with streams running through them. One night, my little brother, our 2 best friends and myself were outside our house playing football and skateboarding. It was about 9:30 p.m. at night and quite dark. Remember, we are the second last house on the road, and in the very last housing estate before it was just barley as far as the eye could see. We were essentially the very edge of town. Anyway, on this night we were hanging out as usual, when suddenly we heard an ear-piercing screech coming from the barley field beside us. It was loud and high-pitched, so much so that it took our attention away in an instant. I had a feeling of panic about it, yet it was kind of funny to our young minds. We decided to investigate, thinking it was a pig or injured animal of some description. So, in our youthful excitement, we burrow through the hedgerow and start running towards the origin of the sound, all laughing in excitement. The barley was ready to be plucked from the earth, so it was very high, up past our waists, so we couldn't see anything that may be on the ground. As we get close to where the sound is coming from, and it sounded like something injured, it stops. We stop and look at each other laughing. Then it starts again. Now it is originating from the point of the field where we first entered. We exchanged glances in confusion before sprinting towards the sound, believing it must be a scared, injured animal. Then the sound stops, before immediately starting again, this time directly behind us. This time it sounded ominous, and the feeling changed. The sound then stopped again, starting instantly but away off in the distance. It moved towards us at speeds way too fast for an animal. Just as it reached us, it stopped again, and then came from a totally different end of the field, hurtling towards us in the pitch black. Now we were frightened. This is not an injured animal. We have no idea what this is. The sound then seems to stop and start from everywhere, moving with incredible speeds all around us, covering huge distances in seconds. Without saying a word, we all run as fast as possible back to the hedgerow which we had entered from. All the while, this loud, screeching, wailing moves all around us. My younger brother begins crying in fear as we all rush to get back to our neighborhood under the safe streetlights near our home. As soon as we cross the threshold, the high-pitched screaming chasing behind us stopped at that border. We were all physically shaken and scared now. My little brother was hysterical for weeks from this, refusing to go back into the field, even on a sunny day. A few years later, my brother would tragically die suddenly in the house. I'm terribly sorry to hear that. That's awful. Many strange sightings of a withered woman were reported around those fields over the years. If anyone is familiar with the legend of the Banshee, let me know what you think. This occurred in Ireland, as you've probably now guessed. Story 7. A promise is a promise. This is a story about my best friend ever. His name was Carlton. He was 26 years my senior, a war prisoner, a dark black man and my best friend ever. When he turned 59, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. After that, I spent every weekend staying with him and his family, helping out where I could. Carlton made me promise a few things during that time. All I can say is carefully making promises to someone on their deathbed. He didn't want to die, in a bed, so his wife would make the big couch up, and I would make the biovac on the floor and sleep there. One night, he wanted to say prayers. I helped him to his knees and to lean against the couch. I knelt next to him, and we started to say our prayers. I looked at him, and he was glowing gold. Carlton was a dark-skinned man. He used to say God made him well done, but at that moment, his whole body was truly gold and shining as if he were the brightest lamp in the world. I touched his arm, and I felt an electric shock, a download of information and visions at warp speed, snatches of things to come. He smiled at me as if he knew. Later that night, he passed quietly, and it broke my heart. A few months later, I was in Boulder, Colorado, driving at night during a crazy blizzard. I know those well. The flakes were hypnotic in the headlights, and it was hard to drive, when all of a sudden, he was sitting next to me in the passenger seat, dressed in a pinstripe suit, clean as may be. He looked at me and said, "Slow down, Junior." It shocked me and I started to brake. I came up to a car sideways, lights off the road. If I had not slowed down, I would have center-punched the car and probably killed the driver or myself. That was event 1. As I said, I made promises, and one of them was to be his eyes and witness his children graduating college. That's sweet. His kids were graduating in the summer, and I attended both. It was heartwarming to fulfill that promise and to be a witness. It wasn't till his daughter was going to be married when I saw him again. He made me promise to walk her down the aisle and scare the hell out of her soon-to-be husband. You know, a dad's job. For some reason, I was not going to be able to be there. But then he appeared next to me as I was driving to work, again dressed sharp. But I first smelled him. Aqua velva, ice blue filled the air. And there he was, clicking his tongue, shaking his finger at me and scolded. "A promise is a promise, Junior. Now it's one thing to see a ghost or spirit, but to get scolded by one is quite another." After avoiding crashing and getting to work, I made sure I had plane tickets and called her and to let her know I would be there. I did attend her wedding, good, and was blessed by walking her down the aisle. He would have been so proud of her. As we did the walk, the lights of the church flickered until I handed her to her husband. Oh, and yes, I stand 6'5", 275 pounds, and I did instruct the groom, advising him to behave, treat her like a queen, and never, ever lay a wrong hand on her. I think he got the message. There are more tales of Carlton, but I'll save them for later. And that was a good story. I am certain that one is 100% true. Story 8. The figure peeking out at me. This experience happened to me before I graduated from high school. I was home alone, like all the other experiences that happened to me before this moment. I was listening to a YouTube video at that moment, but I saw the shadow figure. I was in the dining room, walking around the dining room table, and at the time, my cap and gown were hanging between the living room and the dining room. I think this happened a few weeks before the graduation, or the week of graduation. I didn't see anything around the cap and gown, but I was staring down at my phone, so I wasn't really aware of my surroundings. But when I looked up from my phone, that's when I saw the shadow figure, standing behind my gown. It was peeking around from the cloth, just silently staring at me. I was able to tell that what looked like the shadow figure's hand holding onto the cap and gown. Once I got closer to the shadow figure, I blinked, and it was gone. That moment, I thought that it could have been a dead relative, perhaps. But I don't think it could have been. Since that I only felt fear once I saw that shadow figure. What or who do you think this shadow figure could have been staring at me? Story 9. Everything in its place. This happened many years ago in Longmont, Colorado. It's the second Colorado story tonight. I moved into a house that had 3 other people living there. They worked 3rd shift, and I worked 2nd. I got home one night, and after moving in and turned the TV on, grabbed a beer and a shot of whiskey. Was about to sit down when I noticed the door to the master bedroom was opened. Rule of the house was to keep your doors closed. So I closed the door and sat down. I noticed the door was cracked open again, so I went and closed it, giving it a tug to make sure it was firmly closed this time. I sat down, and again the door was open, and a dark-haired woman stood at the end of the hall. She wore a white long gown, and she looked at me. I froze, and then I'm not sure if I heard it in my head or in my ears, but I heard the words, "Thank you." I watched as she turned and went back into the master bedroom, and the door closed behind her. Freaked out, I rushed to the bedroom and searched it thoroughly. No one. No nothing. Just a cold shiver. Needless to say, I did not go to sleep that night. When my roommates came home, I told them what had happened, and they told me the landlord's wife killed herself in the house and that she haunted the house. They said the fact that I kicked out the roommate's brother the day before because he was shooting a gun in the house was why she wanted to say thank you to me. Strange when a ghost sees you and you them. Very strange. As I lived there, many things happened, but that is another story.
Story 10. My mundane routine with a ghost that haunted a Cracker Barrel. A couple of years ago, I was living in North Canton, Ohio, and had just dropped out of Stark State. If I lost my job, Mom was kicking me from the house, and I was then going to be homeless, so I needed this job. The job was a night janitor position that required me to wear a white dress shirt and dress pants. So on top of paranormal hijinks, I was ruining all my dress clothes for a minimum wage job that I hated. The outgoing night janitor informed me that the place was haunted. Originally, when he said this, I thought he was going to jump out and scare me, but no, the place was legitimately haunted. Being there was just the 2 of us. We knocked out the chores halfway through our shift. We sat down at a checkerboard in front of the fire and played checkers. Clearly you dropped out of college. I had a full view of the gift shop, and I saw one of the pop bottles fly off the shelf. This would begin a routine as follows for my next 2 months, as night janitor at Cracker Barrel. Usually these didn't happen always, but if they did happen around the listed times, 10:30 p.m. arrive, you are locked in all night by yourself. If you exit the building, the alarms sound for an intruder. 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m., a bottle or gift store item flies off the rack. 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m., a fast shadow figure runs in between various doorways. No more than 3 times will this happen during the shift. 3 a.m., blood-curdling scream. This will only happen if you're cleaning the kitchen at the time, so sit in the gift shop or the dining room. For whatever reason, it won't scream when you're in these areas. However, the dishes in the kitchen will crash if you're in these areas around that time. 4 a.m., hear chairs in the dining room getting pulled against the floor. 5 a.m., management usually arrives around this time to let you out so you can clean the parking lot and throw away the trash cans that are...
Is this guy trapped in there in the haunted Cracker Barrel?
Yeah, it's an experience. It's kind of like a locked-in room or, an escape room. There we go. 5 a.m. Management usually arrives around this time to let you out so you can clean the parking lot and throw away the trash cans that are outside. Then you can leave. All around scary at first, but annoying as time went on. You knew what to expect, and generally you'd get your chores done by 2 a.m. and get paid to do nothing and just want to enjoy the rest of your shift, probably reading a grammar book, if I had to opine.
Can I just say, I would love to go to a haunted Cracker Barrel. That sounds so cool.
Oh, yeah, I know. You don't know any joys in life until you see biscuits and gravy flying across the room. Story 11. My mom has something attached to her. This is my mom's experience. She has shared lots of stories and details with me since I was a kid. I want to know what it is and what its intentions are. She seems very uncomfortable with it and tries to brush it off, but I think ignoring it makes it more active. I want to help her embrace what's going on. I can't relay every story as there are way too many that have been happening over her whole life, but I'll add some examples. Ever since she was a little kid, she has felt a strong presence with her. Sometimes it has protected her or even saved her life. There was an incident where a man was luring her into an alley around age 5, but something grabbed her shirt and pulled her away. She thought it was her dad, but there was no one around. Sometimes it would mess with her, even hurting her childhood pets on occasion. There was one time where a baby picture of my mom was pinned to a bulletin board at our work. We work at the same place. She thought it was me trying to mess with her, but it absolutely was not me. The picture came from a photo album in our basement that hadn't been touched in years. The book was still in its original spot, covered with dust when we checked. I have been a part of many incidents, but I have never felt anything or experienced something by myself, only with my mom. She says it feels like someone is always behind or beside her. I guess I want to know what this could be. Should she seek a medium or something to try and communicate with it? I don't want her to be scared of it anymore.
Story 12. Growing up in a haunted house. I had lots of paranormal experiences growing up, so I thought, why not share it on this sub? My house became haunted ever since it was built, so it wasn't a house, it was the land. It was a pretty big property, around 8 canals. That's about 40,000 square feet. And around it was just fields. In the radius of around 1 kilometer, there was no population. There were around 6 to 7 people who worked on our property full-time to maintain it, and every single one of them had a story to tell. So, when the house was being built, construction workers used to see this weird animal who looked like a rabbit. When they went to catch it, it would turn into a rapper and fly away into the air, and it would just vanish. Yes, a rapper. That animal would suddenly turn into an object and vanish. That almost sounds like a skinwalker, I'm going to say. This story has been told to me by 3 different people over the years. When me and my siblings were little, my mother used to hear jingling of anklets at night. My father was always away on business trips, and helpers were not allowed inside the residential property, so we used to be alone. There was no one inside the house, and the jingling sounds and the sounds of people running around the lounge were always heard. Things took a major turn when we grew older. One time, a maid suddenly came over to my mother and asked her, "Yes, ma'am, what is it?" My mother gave her a confused look, and she told her, "You called for me." My mother never did. She told her, "You were standing on the stairs staring at me when I asked, 'Do you want anything, ma'am?' You just gestured to me with your hand to come to you. I completed my work and I came to you." When my mother told her that I hadn't called you, I was in my room the whole time, Her face turned to a pale, ghastly white. Another time, I was alone in my home, and I heard a door opening and then closing by itself. Imagine those doors. They have doors closer to them and are made of wood. They make a big sound when they are closed. When I heard it, I went downstairs to check, and the door was closed and everything was normal. I thought, maybe it's air, which is sus, because air can't open a wooden door, but that was just me coping at the time. I closed all of the windows shut, so there is no air coming from anywhere, and went up. The moment I was on the last step, I again heard the sound of the door opening and then closing, crying face emoji. Now, I was beginning to realize this is some djinn-type stuff. I just stood there for like a minute, but again went downstairs anyway. I was in the middle of the stairs, and I saw that the door was just hanging in between, like not closed, but not open. That was impossible, as the door had a door closer on it, and who the heck would have opened it? All the doors and windows were locked, no human and no air. I'm sure there was some air. I just stood there, a bit frozen and taken aback. I looked at the door for like 5 seconds, and then boom, it closed itself with a bang, like a person had just shut the door hard. I just ran upstairs and increased the volume of the TV so I wouldn't have to hear that shit any longer. One time, I was awoken by a large banging sound, like someone is banging the door very hard. The sound was coming from a lounge, which was a bit far from my room. It was around 2, 3 a.m. maybe, and I went to check on it. I was surprised, but why isn't anyone else woken up? As the sound was very loud, but I didn't give it much thought. When I reached the door, I was so shocked. The sound was coming from behind the door, as if someone was banging on it. But, as loud as the sound was, the door was not vibrating, it was still. Again, I stood there, thinking, what the hell is happening? I was convinced it was a thief or something, so I peeked through the window, was beside a door, and there was no one there. The sound was still coming, but there was no one behind that door. It was a very strange experience. But, as I told that we were experiencing these things since childhood, I just turned and went back to my room and tried to sleep. There was this one thing that used to happen fairly regularly. Whenever one of us was sleeping alone in a room at night, they used to pull the toe of our foot. I swear to God, this happened so many times I lost count. Another thing that usually happened to my mother was that she was slapped on her leg, crying face emoji. Even if we were in the room, she would wake up and angrily ask, "Did you just slap me?" I will sit there cluelessly, looking at her, and then we will both give each other that knowing look and then go back to our work. And the most strange part is that I used to get dreams about this strange type of darkness lingering in our house. One would say that my mind was just playing games or tricks on me, but hear me out. One time, I had a dream there were a bunch of children around the ages 3 to 6, sitting on our lawn and eating raw meat. These kids' clothes and bodies were very dirty. They were just devouring the meat that they had in their hands. I woke up feeling really weird and didn't say anything. I went to the lawn to get some fresh air and saw that there was a trash bag there. I didn't give it much thought and went to the main lounge to eat breakfast. As I was eating, my mother came to me looking a bit uncomfortable and told me that when she woke up, she found a cluster of meat on our lawn. Well, like take a bunch of meat and press it tightly together. That's what I told her about my dream, and both of us were just left speechless. This post is getting too long, otherwise I have a lot more stories to tell, as I have lived in that house for 13 years before moving to another city. Story 13. My childhood home. Context. When I was young, I lived in this old house in Australia. The land was originally all coal mining and dated back pretty far. More specifically, where the house was built was right on top of a campsite where miners would stay in their tents. It's also good to note that when my mum did research on the house, she couldn't find much due to the old documents being burnt in a house fire. But she did find out the house was originally owned by one of the main bosses of the mine when it was built. The experience. This event occurred back when I was only young, somewhere between 2 to 4 years of age. My sister and I were asleep in one of the front rooms that night, my parents' bedroom being close right across the hallway. Everyone was asleep when my mum woke up to the sound of someone walking up the long hallway towards our bedrooms. She said that she could hear the sound of heavy boots and keys shaking as if they were hung on a belt. She shook my dad awake, panicking when the steps got closer, before quickly vanishing, scaring her greatly. It's also important to note, my mum has always believed in the paranormal due to having many experiences that could not be easily explained. And it only gets weirder from here. My mum's phone rang. It was my auntie, who only lived 2-minute drive from us. She said that she'd woken to the sound of someone with big, heavy shoes on and something jangling and walking into her home, walking down the hallway towards her in the kids' room, scared. She tried waking her partner, but as she got ready to go look, the sound of her child screaming scared her, making her burst through to go check on her daughter. Of course, when she got there, no one was there, and her daughter was too young to tell her what she had seen. All we know is that whatever it was scared her greatly, and she struggled to sleep in her room for weeks afterwards. This story still scares my mum and auntie to this day. I have had many other experiences in that house, some crazy stories that scare me to think about today. Please let me know if anyone wants to hear more. Story 14. Estes Method at Home. One day, it was just me and my sister at home alone. My sister, 19 female, downloaded an app that basically worked like a spirit box, and both my sister and I thought it would be funny to try it out. So I blindfolded my sister with an old scarf of mine, and my sister used her earbuds to hear through the app. At first it was normal, until my sister started hearing words like, "Help." I asked who this was, and it didn't answer. Only silence. I asked again, who was it? And this time it said, "Attached." I asked, who are you attached to? And it said, "Red hair." My sister dyed her hair red the month before. For confirmation, Kay asked, "Are you attached to my sister?" And it said, "Yes." I was kind of spooked, and I asked, "How many of you are there?" Only to receive, "We are here." I asked if it was in the house, and I only got the word forest and "come find us." The town where I live has a forest on the west side of town, and 3 of my friends live there. I asked again, "Who is this?" I got a response, "He's coming." Like anyone, I asked, "Who is coming?" Only to get, "He is," and "Run." I asked, "Who is he?" And I got, "Don't speak to him." It was weird. I asked some more questions, but all I can confirm was that either side of the entity or demon is in the forest. But I then decided to try and change the topic and asked, "How did you die?" I got the words, "Bombing." It turns out, back in World War II, there was an unexploded hand grenade in the building on the main street of the town I live in, and it turns out, back in 2006, a contractor found these grenades. I got my sister out of Estes Method and told her about what I found. Then I suggested I go under, so I did. My response wasn't like my sister. Mine sounded more panicked, scared, saying words like "run" and "get out." And when my sister asked who she should run from, the thing told her, her. My sister asked if the spirit was afraid of me, and the thing said yes, and dark hair. My hair is dark brown. There was way more that was said, but I can't really remember now. But the one thing I'll always remember was hearing a loud male voice that said, "Get out." I was spooked, and I got out of the Estes Method. After taking a little break, I went under again. This time, I only received silence and words like, "not safe" and "run" and "get out." After all, we can confirm there was a spirit attached to my sister, and the spirits are maybe afraid of me for some reason. And also, there is an entity or something in the forest. If you made it this far, I'm glad for you, and I hope that you have a wonderful night.